welcome to day 23, part 3. Turns out I may have been barking up the wrong tree with the iron deficiency anemia. It's okay, I'm not ashamed to be wrong, considering doctors across the world couldn't figure out if ACE inhibitors were a good thing or a bad thing for weeks with this COVID-19 outbreak. It's not about being wrong, guys. It's about following the research, navigating and correcting the ship. When I was talking about the iron deficiency anemia, it was speculation, and I still may be right about parts of it, which I'll explain later. I was given an article yesterday. I'll put it right here. I'm not going to keep referencing back to it. It'll be right there. From my friend Bruce. I will go over that article with you guys, what it says. I found it fascinating, at least parts of it. Much of it you guys have already heard. It talks about high ALT levels and how the ALT levels get high from the liver. It talks about the problems with machine respiration. We talked about how machines aren't meant to breathe for you. And in fact, it goes even further about how this whole process is probably completely the wrong way to approach this anyway. And we went over yesterday how 2/3 of people that are on the respirators are dying once they get to the respirator. So let's get into that in 1 second. I want to take one moment to say to you guys, if you didn't see my meditation in the morning, this thing right here, I tried it this morning. This is a sort of a higher end neti pot. You can get it for like 25 bucks at Walgreens. I have found this to be unbelievably helpful in clearing out your sinuses first thing in the morning before your breath work. I realized that for the past few days, I've been sleeping with my windows open. And even though my allergies haven't been bad since I was younger, when you lay flat on your back and you leave the windows up all night, pollen gets worse at night. So some of you may wake up with a little bit of a phlegmy throat. I noticed that during my breath work and my meditations that I was like a little for no reason over the past couple weeks. So I used that this morning and it made a huge, huge difference. And guys, if you're not doing breath work yet, I will talk about Chris Cuomo in a few minutes. I'll put a link to Chris Cuomo right there. You're going to hear him talking about so much stuff that we've been talking about, including breath work, but he says something else in that video which we've got to talk about, and we will. All right, stop getting me off topic. Let's get back to this article talking about COVID-19 and iron and where I think I may have misled you guys, but let's correct that ship right now. So we talked in the past over here when we talked about iron and hemoglobin, and I gave you my rationale about the issue here. All of that remains true as far as, red blood cells and making sure that you have adequate iron and all these things. All these things are in fact important. Low iron is an issue, but so is high iron, right? You don't want too much iron. You don't want iron to be too low. But when it comes to what's going on with hemoglobin, it intuitively made sense to me, and when we were talking with Jordan, why low iron would be so concerning. But it turns out that what's happening here in this disease is we talked about the hemoglobin protein and that there's 4 hemes that come off of that protein. So each of these are hemes. So there's an iron ion that is part of the heme. And it turns out, and this is what's part of what's necessary here to bind oxygen. Again, we've talked about in the previous video, in order for hemoglobin to deliver oxygen. So like as soon as you get one oxygen here, oxygen becomes more likely to start to bind. And so as soon as you get 1, you're more likely to get 2, then you're more likely to get 3, you're more likely to get 4. What happens here in this COVID-19, and then that oxygen obviously is delivered to organs, you get the idea. What's happening with COVID-19 is that COVID-19, they're showing that COVID's glycoproteins are actually binding, okay, to this site, and this iron ion is now free in the body. So now you have basically this toxic iron ion that is floating around and can become quite deleterious in the body. But beyond that, there's really a problem here. 2 things. One is that if these glycoproteins are binding the way that I'm describing here, to these hemes, then hemoglobin obviously can't do its work. So your body reacts by asking the body to make more hemoglobin and more hemoglobin. But of course, you keep running into this same problem. The downstream effect is that this overloads the liver. Remember, we talked a whole bunch about how do we have healthy organs. If your liver is already overloaded, you're going to have a big problem. That's why fatty liver is such a big deal, because now you get this going on in the body and your ALT levels will go up even higher and higher. This maps onto serious consequence, serious inflammation, and the downstream effect is cytokine storm, cytokine storm. We talked about cytokines in a different video, and I will talk about it again in a few minutes. I'll be putting links to things up top because this video is just too important. So this seems to be what's happening here. So it turns out that maybe it's not the low iron, right? It turns out that it seems to be happening via this mechanism right here, which makes sense. So now you may ask yourself, wow, so what can we do about it? Well, again, you may ask yourself, well, why is this happening to some people and not others? So meaning, like, once the virus takes hold, this seems to be what's happening. Now, is it, of course, still really important to have healthy organs and adequate amounts of red blood cells and hemoglobin and all these things? It would be like saying your body's about to fight a war. How many soldiers you got? How well trained are they? Right? What type of ammo you got? See what I mean? So the more resources the body has, the longer the body can, it sort of becomes like a war of attrition, like who's going to win, the body or the virus. So there's different phases that we're seeing that the COVID-19 virus is taking. It's taking this first phase, then a second phase, then a third phase, where people have certain symptoms, and then they have next set of symptoms and the next set of symptoms. What we don't want to see are those symptoms to get worse and worse and worse. So there's speculation right here, and I will put another link right here. This is from a website that's called MedCram, and this is normally a website that's reserved for people studying for their medical exams. And this is a site that I love to learn from, but it's been the past 51 or 52 days, they've been focusing only on COVID. So I've been following their stuff every day as well. But I'm going to put a link right here. I shared it in the past. Guess what they're talking mostly about during these phases? They're talking mostly about a process of hormesis, which you guys are familiar with, which is heat, sauna work, which we've talked about in the past many, many times. Heat. So they talk both about the hot and the cold. Again, I've shared in the past about getting into the banya, doing the heat, and then the cold plunge, heat, and then the cold plunge. Some of my clients, I've brought you with me. It's not fun, it's not easy, but check this out. There is real speculation now, not just with him, but with many doctors, saying, what if we started to give people these thermal protocols as soon as they become symptomatic, meaning as soon as they start to lose their sense of taste, or as soon as they have that first little raise in temperature? What if we start introducing them to hot baths and things of this nature? Now, I'm saying all this to you guys because you could have either started doing that when you get symptoms, or you could have been doing it all along, right? So if you have access to sauna, hot baths, cold showers, which you guys know that I do every morning after meditation, we have an opportunity to create in our lives certain protocols which are life-altering for their own reasons, meaning that it shouldn't take a pandemic for us to reap the benefits of what we know about sauna work and what we know about cold therapy. Two extremely effective therapies for raising norepinephrine in the brain or longevity. We see sauna work is unbelievable for longevity. We see it's unbelievable for the immune system, vagal nerve tone, which is your rest and digest. Similarly to breath work, why do we do it? Similarly to red light therapy, infrared, far infrared, near infrared, why do we do it? There's all these things we've been talking about, and you're going to continue to hear more and more about, that I'm hoping you guys that will recognize that trying to give you guys a gift. Here it is. Here you go. In a single day, with not a lot of time, you can practice these things that map onto not just this COVID outbreak, but also a lifestyle where you can continue to reap the rewards. People that meditate have bolstered immune systems. People that do sauna work have bolstered immune systems. People that do the hot and the cold together have bolstered immune systems, but they also have other things in common, meaning we know that cold work boosts mitochondrial function through the browning of fat. And we talked about mitochondrial uncoupling in a different video. The point is that we've talked about a lot of stuff. So here, when we're talking about what's actually happening here and we see the different phases, the question is, well, how is it progressing there? Now, hopefully that makes sense, that if we're proactive, we don't wait until we get symptomatic and then say, oh, let's start taking hot baths and cold showers. Let's do it now, right? Let's not wait to start eating right. And because guys, if there's one thing that we know that this disease is most predictive of, it's being obese. Being obese is what's literally killing people. And then once that person gets flat on their back and needs the ventilation work, guys, the more weight you have on your body, when you're laying on that back on the ventilator, that weight is just crushing your lungs even further. It makes sense, okay? Let me bring you over here and let's talk about another subtopic of all this. So hopefully this now makes sense. I'm going to continue to really look at this carefully and follow. If anything, you could admit that I was right, that this has something to do with iron, and we should monitor people's iron intake. So again, in blood work, whether your iron is too high or too low, it's a concern. There's a sweet spot. I suspect that that's what's happening here. I don't believe that I was wrong about being anemic. I still believe it's its own problem. But just in general, in the normal human body, what's happening here is creating these deleterious iron ions to run rampant in the body, causing oxidative stress elsewhere in organs, which I said, end result, we can talk about different organs here, but that's why the ALT levels are raising so high in the liver. Okay. Now, and so we can make a further speculation that people, so here, let me give you another further speculation. We know that that high iron is also concerning, and that men tend to have higher iron. Well, men are dying much more from this disease than women, 70% compared to 30%. Is it because men have such high iron? Meaning compared to women. When you look at the population, men have, when you look at blood work, women tend to have low, meaning anemic. I think it's 20% to 3%, 20% women, 3% men, something like that. It's huge. But when you look at high iron, men are much more likely to have high iron. So is it those people? Is that the reason? I don't know, I just thought of that off the top of my head, but let's continue to track that, all right? I'm not gonna commit to it yet. I'm not committing to it yet. I'm just gonna follow the research. Let me talk to you real quick about Chris Cuomo. If I didn't put the link already, I'll put it again here. I want you to watch that video, listen to what he says. Now, you'll hear so many things that he's talking about that you've heard me say, but here's what I wanna say that nobody's gonna say. But since Chris Cuomo said something, I'm gonna say it now. He talks about this virus is really like, it's like an act of will. Like you need will in order to get through it. Like it's gonna test your will. Let me elaborate on that. You guys have heard me talk about the Nocebo Effect. So if you believe that Chris Cuomo is right, that there really is something to do like with your mind, the strength of your mind. Well, guess what? This is something that I think is understated that's happening in society today. Meaning, when we look at cytokine storm, you want to know one of the main reasons why there's a cytokine storm? Stress. I'm going to put a link right here to a video. Right here. They're going to talk about what happens when you get stress and what happens to those natural killer cells. Now, what do you mean natural killer cells? Let me go back for a second and talk about, just remind you that the sauna therapies and all this stuff, that stuff that's working via the hormetic response, it's raising those natural killer cells, which helps to kill off all these deleterious cells that we want to go away. All right, we want all that stuff to go away. It's called autophagy. All right, literally means to eat itself. We want young, robust cells. So autophagy helps get rid of the old stuff that we don't want around. All right, so stress, when it comes to stress, we'll go back, look at that video. It talks about what happens during the first few hours of the stress response, what happens to your immune system, and then the long-term effects. Now, guys, you tell somebody they're positive for COVID-19, what do you think is going to happen to their stress levels? The nocebo effect is when you tell somebody that they have something and they don't have it. So if you give them a sugar pill and you tell them to swallow it, and then you say, hey, look, I just gave you whatever poison and you're likely to, get the flu within the next 24 hours. There's a strange percentage of the population that for no reason will get the flu. You're familiar with the placebo effect, right? Where that's to placate, meaning that you give somebody a sugar pill and tell them it's going to fix their cough, and 24 hours later, their cough is fixed. This is well studied in all pharmaceutical drugs that have to be passed, and there's an unusual amount, something like 25-30% of the population reacts to the placebo effect. And guys, yes, it is predictive in your 23andMe results. There are people that are much more likely to respond to the placebo effect. But similarly, there's more people that are going to respond to the nocebo effect. Let me just remind you, Chris Cuomo is the one that said, it has to do with your mind. Well, what he's not telling you about is, how does the nocebo effect affect your mind? Meaning, are these people actually making themselves worse without having to make themselves worse? You're tested positive for COVID-19. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay, the stress response is a thing that maps on to the reverse of every hormone that you want to happen in your body in order to have a strong immune system, and raise all of the possible bad hormones that you want to happen in your body. And then that continues every single day. Now, you may be saying, but that's not really a nocebo response. They're saying that they tested positive. What I'm saying is that their reaction to it is an overreaction. And what I am saying is the one thing that we know about this COVID-19 virus is the fact that the way that your body is reacting to it is an overreaction, meaning that we are running the immune system to the ground. It's doing too much, it's reacting, blah, 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 blah. The mind can contribute to that via the nocebo effect, via stress. So if you want to listen to Chris Cuomo, listen to me too, because I promise you, this is another thing that's not measurable, but you can keep in check. How do you do it? You start your day off with some meditation, with some breath work. You learn how the immune system works, man. And you sit tight, you buckle up. You say, come on, man, I got this. I'm gonna lose weight, I'm gonna get outside, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna make sure that I'm supplementing correctly. I'm gonna do all the stuff that's been talked about here. I'm gonna continue to learn, and I'm gonna continue to correct and navigate the territory, just like we did today when we talked about iron. You see what I'm saying, guys? All right, come on now. You had to have liked that video. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a share. Give me a comment at the bottom. Hey guys, I know I get a little angry in these videos. I know I get like real passionate, fiery. All right, it's because this is what I do, man. I care. All right, I care about all of you. I want to see us overcome this. I want to get back to business as usual, baby. Come on, let's do this. You want a bicep flex? There it is. All right, now let's go. Have a good day.